At 6 o'clock. Welcome to the Kollel Jewish Learning Center of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So far, it's just you and me tonight, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Baruch Hashem. So last time we ended off speaking about the last thing that we were speaking about, which I was about to get into. Are my 3 rules, which have helped me in my battle with the Yetzer Hara. We spoke about the difference between pleasure and indulgence. That pleasure is anything where the mind has a role to play and presence of mind is demanded, and where indulgence is anything where the mind does not have a role to play and presence of mind is not demanded. And that everything in the Torah is by definition pro-pleasure and anti-indulgence. And I forgot to mention that pleasure is eternal. That things which are done according to the Torah, things which are truly pleasureful, last forever. And things which are indulgent, they fade, they're transient. So, it's the 4th of Adar now, Adar Aleph, Tafshin Pei Daled, 5784. And I would like to begin by saying thank you for listening, and thank you to Hashem, thank you to my rabbis, thank you to my parents, thank you to my friends, my family, everyone that I've met in life. Baruch Hashem. I've had a lot of people help me. So, there were a couple things that I have to clarify or correct from the last shiurim that I gave. The first is that I gave over a story about the Chazon Ish, and how he was asked what makes a person into the Chazon Ish. And I'll read exactly what the story says, because before I gave it over, but I added in that the Chazon Ish stopped and that he thought for a second and then he answered. And I just wanted to repeal or say that I added in that part that he thought for a second. That was my own embellishment to the story, and I don't think it was my place to embellish or to add anything to what is written here. And there are multiple reasons for that. One of them is that I'm not sure it gives the full honor to the Chazon Ish. I'm not sure that it is accurate, and every detail of a story is important, and so to say that he thought about it, I can't say that I know that that's what happened. So it says that the Chazon Ish was silent for a moment, then he answered in the merit of Kibud Av V'Aim. So that's the first clarification I wanted to make. And the second is that I said that everything in the Torah is applicable to every one of us. Everything in the written Torah is applicable to every single one of us. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in the written Torah. And I believe I referenced the tests which Avram Avinu went through, that they weren't all listed in the Torah because they weren't all relevant to us. Now, that may be true, but I could not find the source for that. So, that's the second clarification that I would like to make. Moving on from that, for now, I'd like to mention a few more of my mentalities, my mantras, or mantras that I've learned, or concepts that are very fundamental to how I see the world and how I go about living. I realized one time where I was going to say something nice to a professor that I had, who was expressing that he kind of, didn't have so many friends, and I thought about saying something nice to him, and then I was like, oh, I'll just say it like later, and then what happened was, before I got a chance to say that, he died. And I found out later that he had a brain aneurysm and he died. And he was a really sweet person, and I was sad about that. And I realized that I should never wait to say something nice. So that's something that I try to live by. Another thing is that by observing how my life has gone and the things which I strive for, and a lot of them don't happen when I'm expecting them to, or trying to make them happen, or I have something that I really want, I'm trying to do for the right reasons, but it doesn't happen exactly when. But when it does happen, and when things in my life do happen, it's become so clear to me how everything happens in its right time. So that's also a concept that I learned in the Torah. I believe Shlomo Melech, King Solomon, says that everything happens be'ito, in its right time, and that there's a time for everything. There's a time for peace, and there's a time for war. And he goes on. The third, which I'd like to mention, is something which plays into some of the things that I'm going to be talking about as well, which it ties into the 3 rules that I'm going to say later, and that is what I would like to share now is, do not accept negativity, and positivity will follow. So I'd like to do a quick review of the last couple shiurim. We spoke about the mitzvah to know Hashem, that the Rambam lists it with reference to the mitzvah, the first of the 10 commandments, that I am Hashem your God who took you out of Egypt to be God to you, and that we have the obligation, the mitzvah to know Hashem. There's also a mitzvah to have emunah in Hashem. The Rambam lists in the Sefer Mitzvos with regard to that same mitzvah. That we spoke about the concept of bitachon, of trusting Hashem, and what I learned in yeshiva, and I would like to say it correctly. If I say it incorrectly, I ask forgiveness in advance. But that trust in Hashem means that either, I'm not sure the exact word, that I don't even know if I need to say whether it's a belief or a knowledge, but trust in Hashem is that Hashem interacts with us. And that's seen in this mitzvah, the first of the 10 commandments, of I am Hashem your God who took you out of Egypt. Hashem's telling us, I took you out of Egypt because I am involved and concerned with you. We spoke about humility, about Moshe Rabbeinu, that he embodied the character trait of humility, and that when Hashem gives him praise in the Torah, we didn't say this before, but when Hashem gives him praise in the Torah, he says that Moshe Rabbeinu is the most humble. He doesn't say that he's the most wise and the most God-fearing and any of the other things which he could have said, which were true. But Hashem said that Moshe was the most humble. And we see the first parak of Pirkei Avos, the first chapter of the ethics of our fathers, which is it's the father of all of the other Torah, oral Torah, which we learn, as the Rebbe says in Biurim. I believe it was the Rebbe. I have to check for sure, but I'm pretty sure. It says it in the Pirkei Avos, the Kahot Pirkei Avos, that Pirkei Avot it's what everything else is predicated on, is understanding the other Torah that we learn and that is taught is having these ethics, this foundation. This is how we build. This is what we build on. This is where everything else comes from. That's a concept of the Av, of the Father, is the source of the other things, or from the place from which other things come. So the first two steps of becoming a Torah student is Moshe and Yehoshua, Moses and Joshua, humility and discipline. Discipline, Yehoshua, he was always by the side of Moshe Rabbeinu. He was taking care of what needed to be taken care of. He was dedicated to the Torah. He was disciplined. We spoke about the Akedah, the binding of Isaac. And we went through some ideas that I have about how this is an example, this is the example of how choices work, and how coming to see and know Hashem and succeed in the choices which He places in front of us, how it works. We spoke about the process of making a choice and finding salvation. We spoke about the prayer of Chonen Hada'as, which is that Hashem bestows da'as to mankind. He bestows awareness, knowledge. He bestows awareness to mankind. And awareness is the translation that I'm mostly going to be focused on. And we spoke about the prayer of Ribon Kol Ha'olamim, that Master of the universe, it's not on our own righteousness that we offer our prayers before you. The prayer says, Master of all worlds, not in the merit of our righteousness do we cast our supplications before you, but in the merit of your abundant mercy. What are we? What is our life? What is our kindness? What is our righteousness? What is our salvation? What is our strength? What is our might? What can we say before you, Hashem, our God, and the God of our forefathers? Are not all the heroes like nothing before you, the famous as if they had never existed, the wise as if devoid of wisdom, and the perceptive as if devoid of intelligence? For most of their deeds are desolate, and the days of their lives are empty before you. The preeminence of man over beast is non-existent, for all is vain. We spoke about the pasuk of Karov Hashem l'chol karav, l'chol asher yikra'uhu ve'emes. That Hashem is close to all who call to Him, all who call to Him sincerely. We spoke about what is taught in Rashi. Actually, I'm not sure if we spoke about it. It's on the list, but there is a concept which Rashi teaches us in a pasuk in Devarim. At least that's where I found it. That's where I saw it. That everything is in the hands of heaven except for fear of heaven. Hakol bidei shamayim chutz miyiras shamayim. So in terms of how we define yiras shamayim, and how we understand what it means that everything is in the hands of heaven except for fear of heaven, except for yiras shamayim, respect for heaven. The way that I understand this is that yiras shamayim is both an expression of a choice, and it is something which is developed and attained through those choices. So, yiras shamayim it's a way of acting. When we have a choice, it's my theory that first we know what the right thing to do is. Right? I may come across a situation, I may see my tefillin sitting on the table, and I don't even have to think about it. I see it and I know that I should put it on. It reminds me instantly. I'm instantly reminded when I see it that I should put it on. And there's other ways that we may come about attaining this awareness of something that we should do. But let's say that I see it, right? I don't have to see it and try to think about what it might mean. There's a force within me that knows that this is what I should do, supposing that it's the right time of day, that I haven't done it, that I'm still need to fulfill my obligation, and that I'm not currently involved in something which outweighs it. But typically, we come across situations where we know what the right thing to do is, and then afterwards, the way I understand it is that afterwards comes the Yetzer Hara and gives us all sorts of reasons why we don't really have to, or why we should question if we should do it, why we should maybe stay in bed, not get out of bed, right? The first halacha in the Shulchan Aruch is that we should yizgaber ka'ari, that we should strengthen ourselves like a lion to get up in the morning to serve our Creator. The Mishnah Brura says there that in the winter we should overcome our Yetzer. We shouldn't listen to it when it tells us that it's too cold. I don't want to get out of the covers. I want to stay in bed. That we have to strengthen ourselves to, like a lion, and overcome that and not succumb to the Yetzer. And then in the summer, when we wake up, that we should, and our Yetzer tells us we didn't get our fill of sleep yet, we should stay in bed, that we have to overcome it. We shouldn't listen to the Yetzer. That's what the Chafetz Chaim says in the Mishnah Brura, the commentary on the halacha, the law of that we all follow, that we all listen to. So, according to my theory, you wake up and you know that you should get out of bed, and then comes the Yetzer and says, no, we should stay in bed. So that's what a choice really looks like in my understanding and in my experience. And going with this theory has unlocked so much for me. And it's unlocked my relationship with Hashem, which I would like to, and I intend on explaining further at length, both in this shiur and in the coming shiurim. Everything which I've said up until now and everything which I'm saying now these are the building blocks for me explaining how I have a relationship with Hashem. And how I come to know Hashem, as we're commanded to know Hashem, and that we're not given any commandments that we can't fulfill. Hashem only commands us of something if we're capable of fulfilling it. So for us to be commanded to know Hashem, it means that we actually are able, we're actually capable, and we're expected to come to know Hashem. So with regard to the Akedah, I would like to read a Devar Torah that I found, which is Hasidic Insights to the Akedah with Reb Yoel Kahn. So it says, self-sacrifice, no strings attached. The climax of this week's Parsha is the Akedah, in which Avram Avinu is ready to sacrifice his only son to Hashem. This is an episode which features heavily throughout our tefillos, underscoring how central and significant it is. Tefillos are prayers. However, it is hard to understand the singularity of Avraham's act. The mesirus nefesh, self-sacrifice, Avraham displayed was replicated countless times. I'm supposing that's what it says. Some of it was cut up. That's my mistake, but we'll continue because it probably only missed a line or two. So we see the mesirus nefesh Avraham displayed was replicated countless times. Probably, I think it says throughout history. So why is this one such a big deal? So we must conclude that the mesirus nefesh, self-sacrifice of the Akedah, surpassed Avraham's previous accomplishments. The binding of Isaac. That this self-sacrifice surpassed Avraham's previous accomplishments. Moreover, the Midrash states that Hashem informed Avraham that were he to fail this final test, all his previous trials would be rendered worthless. Clearly, the Akedah didn't merely eclipse Avraham's prior sacrifices, but served as the definitive barometer of whether he had mesirus nefesh at all. Why was this the case? Selfish mesirus nefesh. To explain this, we must preface one final question. Chassidus links being moser nefesh to the level of the soul known as yechida, an element which Gentiles are lacking. Yet, there are copious instances in which non-Jews willingly gave their lives for what they believed. However false that ideal or belief may have been. It's true that they may have sacrificed their lives, but this falls short of what mesirus nefesh is really all about. The true definition of mesirus nefesh isn't merely disregard for one's own life, but rather committing the ultimate act of self-nullification. Take, for example, a case of an individual who puts his life on the line for the very selfish purpose of making headlines and becoming famous. He may have sacrificed his life, but he surely has not nullified himself. Let's examine a higher level. A person who has lived his entire life based on a certain belief is told to act in a way that conflicts with it. Say, to laugh at his belief in public. He stands his ground on the pain of death due to the sense of being unable to survive in a way that is at odds with something so central to his life. Although he has sacrificed his life for his faith, it's not a true act of self-sacrifice. Missed a line or two, but so maybe he says it picks up the approach is false. So I must do whatever it takes to prevent that, even at the expense of my life. So he gives up his life not to give up his belief or his ideal, even though it's false, because everybody's going to laugh at him. Although this person may possess ironclad conviction for his faith, he too is not truly acting selflessly. What he is really doing is operating on the basis of a particular self-serving, albeit altruistic agenda. I do hope I got all of this story. I hope I didn't miss any, so. Sacrifice without gain. Jewish mesirus nefesh, on the other hand, means to sacrifice one's life not because something will be gained from it, but solely for Hashem. This is only possible because we have a neshama which instinctively connects with Hashem, which other nations lack. Tanya explains that a soul is likened to a flame which longs to detach itself from its wick in order to reunite with its source, whereupon it ceases to exist. Typically, a person wishes to expand, to acquire more, never less. Yet a fire's sole desire is to reconnect with its source, regardless of the consequences. Likewise, the Jewish soul reflexively cleaves to its creator, not because something will be gained from this, but rather because it wishes to connect to its source. This selflessness was not on display at Or Kasdim, since Abraham's work would be ruined were he not to demonstrate the willingness to die in support of his lifelong campaign. Or Kasdim was one of his tests where he jumped into a furnace, into a flame, into a fire, and it didn't burn him, and he lived. So Rabbi Yoel and this Devar Torah continues. The fact that he had this incentive to bolster his legacy therefore undermines any attempt to discern authentic mesirus nefesh in his previous actions. Only the Akedah can be deemed true mesirus nefesh by this. It skips a line, properly observing it. Yet, they acted against their own interests simply because their neshama acted like fire, gravitating towards its source, even at its own expense. We therefore mention the Akedah often, not only to invoke the merit of something our ancestor once did, but to evoke our own merit and demonstrate the uniqueness of a Jew. I think that it was referring to Yitzchak Avinu, to Isaac, and to Abraham, how they gave over everything by the Akedah, and there was no one there watching. Nobody was there to see. It went against everything. It would have totally disproven, it would have totally, maybe not disproven, but it's what we spoke about, what was spoken about right before this, about doing something out of selfish motives. So this would have had the opposite. This was the opposite of that. He was willing to go against everything that all of his ideals, everything that he stood for, everything that he was preaching. He was willing to go against all of it and to deal with whatever consequences, to deal with whatever image that gave him in other people's eyes, in other people's minds. So the two of them sacrificed everything in private. No one was there, just for the sake of Hashem. So that was true mesirus nefesh. They nullified themselves to Hashem. Just one small room. The Shulchan Aruch states that one of the reasons we recite the Akedah daily is to remind us that we must overcome our natural inclinations. Just as Yitzchak sacrificed his life for Hashem. But how is it possible to compare what is sometimes merely an inconsequential struggle to an accomplishment as mighty as the Akedah, the binding of Isaac? The answer is that mesirus nefesh isn't measured by its scale, but by its essential quality. We ordinarily act solely in our own self-interest, be it on a basic level or because this is what we believe, think, or feel, and we cannot be moved to do even the slightest action which doesn't fit that bill. To spend even a single minute on something for no purpose other than for Hashem is therefore reminiscent of the Akedah. To spend even a single minute on something for no purpose other than for Hashem is therefore reminiscent of the Akedah. So mesirus nefesh it's not about the scale, but it's about the essential quality. To spend even a single minute on something for no purpose other than for Hashem is therefore reminiscent of the Akedah. It continues. I once heard someone relate that he was present at a Farbrengen, Hasidic gathering, prior to the Frierdiker Rebbe's passing, where the Rebbe used the following parable. A king once arrived in a foreign place and requested lodgings, no matter how sparse, on one condition: that the place be uniquely his, that he not feel like a guest, but rather be allowed to feel entirely in possession of this space. This parallels the concept of the Akedah, which calls for creating and the rest of it is not here, but I believe it says something along the lines of creating a place for Hashem to be welcome, without any strings attached, without anything but it, to create a place where Hashem is welcome and it's completely his, and to create that within ourselves. That's mesirus nefesh. That's true self-sacrifice. That's self-nullification. And it's apropos that in this week's Parsha, Teruma, we are told that we should build a sanctuary and Hashem will dwell amongst them. He'll dwell in them. So it's interesting that it uses the plural, dwell in them, after saying that we should build a sanctuary. And so the commentators explain, the sages explain that this means that each individual should create a sanctuary within themselves, and Hashem will dwell within us. There are a lot of parallels between the Beit HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, the sanctuary, the tabernacle that they had in the desert, and we each have our own personal one within us, to the T. Exactly. There's a lot to learn there. It's something that I strive to understand and learn how to appreciate and experience and perceive. But that is what we are taught. To create a dwelling place for Hashem, not only in the world at large, but within our hearts. And we're also taught in the Torah that Hashem desires, He wants our hearts. We see this by sacrifices and times in history where Hashem says, I don't want your burnt offerings, when your hearts weren't pure, your hearts weren't directed towards me, they weren't honest with me, they didn't want me. So, with regard to something which I brought up last year about the words "V'taher libeinu la'avdecha be'emes," that we say to Hashem in our prayers, and purify our hearts, that we can serve you be'emes, in truth, in sincerity, in truth. So I just wanted to clarify that I don't even have this deep understanding about the meaning of those words. All I know is that it is something valuable, and I feel it encapsulates everything, all of my prayers. And I love this song. It's dear to me. It's a way in which I serve Hashem just in simplicity. And simplicity, tamimus, is one of the most important ways that we serve Hashem, that we relate to Hashem. There's a sefer, a book called Baderech by Rabbi Judah Michel, and it's all about how to do tshuva according to the structure which was taught by Rav Zusha of Anipoli. So each letter in the word teshuvah corresponds to a different aspect of teshuvah. And so in the Sefer Baderech, Rabbi Judah Mischel, he does an amazing job. He brings all sorts of examples and sources and teachings to illuminate each one of these sections of tshuva. And one of them is serving Hashem in tamimus, in simplicity. Not complicated, I gotta all of this. Those things serve a purpose as well. Those are good as well. There's a time for those things. But to serve Hashem simply, just, Hashem, I love you, I want to be, please purify my heart that I can serve you honestly, that I can serve you in truth. That says it all. And from that, I feel that everything else is included. And that's why it's one of my favorite prayers. And it's my dream to sing that with as many Jews as there are in the world together. So, there's another pasuk which is important to me, which I think it explains a lot of what I've been describing in terms of yiras shamayim, fear of Hashem, respecting Hashem, and the role that it plays in the choices that we make, in what a choice is in and of itself. And so that pasuk is a pasuk which is found in the siddur, in the Chabad siddur in Tachanun. That's where I first saw it, or first paid attention to it. But it's a pasuk from Tehillim. It's from Psalms, from chapter 25, verse 12. And it says, Mi zeh ha'ish yirei Hashem yorenu b'derech yivchar. Whoever fears the Lord, he shall be shown what path to choose. So that's my understanding of what fear of heaven is, when we're told that everything is in the hands of heaven except for fear of heaven. Hashem, in my experience, He'll make it clear to me, He'll give me the awareness of what I should do. And in doing that, He is showing me the proper path to choose. And that is fear of Hashem. When I choose that, that is the choice to fear Hashem. Because oftentimes, maybe every time, that voice, that fear of Hashem, carries with it an obligation, an expectation to nullify ourselves to Hashem, to be moser nefesh, to give up some time, even a minute, to give up a desire that I have, an echsar that I have, that we spoke about in Tehillim 23. This want that I have all these wants. And David HaMelech says, I don't want, Hashem is my shepherd. Hashem is my shepherd. He shows me the right way to go. And when I choose that way, I see Hashem, and that's yiras shamayim. And that's what happened with Avram Avinu, is that he chose to do the right thing, and then, he names the place, the mountain, Hashem Yireh. This is the place where Hashem is seen. He saw the irony which happened right after that there was a ram caught in the thicket. He lifted his eyes and saw it right away, which is itself miraculous, but it was within nature. And that all resulted from him doing what he was told to do, to what Hashem made clear to him to do. And speaking about the greatness of Avram Avinu, I was speaking with my father after last year, and he said that what really amazes him is that Avram Avinu never said why. God told him to do it, to take his son, his firstborn, the one he loves, Isaac, sacrifice him. He gets up and he goes and he never asks why. So, that was my father's thought. And Rashi says, on this pasuk of whoever fears the Lord, he shall be shown what path to choose. Rashi says, the Holy One, blessed be He, will guide him on the road that he chooses. That is the good road. There is a good road in life. There's a good road. God makes all these promises about the blessing that we'll see. All these promises. We say the Shema and the paragraphs that go with the Shema twice a day. At least. Some people say more. Reminding us, if you do these things, it's going to rain in the right time. You're going to see all this blessing. It'll be lush. You'll be very happy. Essentially, you'll be very happy. It'll be very good for you. If you don't, the land will reject you. My Rebbe said in a shiur that the land is saying, I do not support your actions. I will not finance these actions. You have to leave. I'm not going to support you. So this is the nature of life. This is the nature of choices. And we see here that there's a good road, there's a good choice. And oftentimes I have found that the good choice is the one which is the most demanding, Usually there's a demanding choice, and then there's a choice which keeps me comfortable, which feels good, which is according to what I want. And maybe I don't have we'll get into that later, but that's really it. What I know is right versus what I feel like. And what I know is right often demands of me to make sacrifices. And the other thing is that I don't know how these sacrifices are going to play out. I don't know what I'm going to get from it. And I've found that, so Hashem is chonein hadas, right? Hashem gives me the awareness. He gives me the awareness that this is the right thing to do. He brings me to a situation. And I find that in those situations, it's like everything else, I forget all the reasons why maybe I made this choice 1,000 times already, but in that moment, I could still forget all of the wisdom and the insight that I came to, all the good reasons to do it. I could forget all of that. I'm just faced with the choice simply to do it or to not do it. To do what's right or to do what feels good, what I want to do. What my nefesh wants to do. I think that's my understanding, my nefesh. And I think that the answers also lie in Tehillim 23. Right? Nafshi yeshovev. My soul, he satisfies. That's part of Tehillim 23. I don't want, and yet my soul, he still satisfies. When you do something that's good, it's good for everything. It's good for everyone. It's good for every part of yourself. You just might not understand it right away. And this brings us to the concept of na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will listen. And that's what differentiates the Jews as well from the rest of the world. And that is the relationship between the Jews and the Jewish people. Those were the words that we said to accept the Torah at Mount Sinai. God came to all the nations and he offered them the Torah. And they said, well, one nation said, can we still steal? And God said, no. They said, we don't want it. Another nation said, can we kill? God said, no. We don't want it. And so it went. And God came to the Jewish people and he said, would you like the Torah? And we said, we'll do it and then we'll understand why. We'll do it. We don't care. You're giving us this Torah. You want to give us this Torah? We'll do it. Na'aseh v'nishma. First na'aseh. First we will do it. And then v'nishma, then we will listen, then we will understand. And that's the relationship that Hashem, it was those words that Hashem decided to give us the Torah. Those words are what the whole relationship between us and the Torah, us and Hashem, is that's the foundation. So it makes sense to me that when I come to a choice and I forget about everything, all of the reasons, it kind of is a little bit ironic. It's kind of like, oh wow, well, if I dissect this, if I pay attention to this, there is a blessing, there is a prayer that we say 3 times a day that Hashem is the one who gives me awareness. We also say that Hashem is close to all who call to Him, to all who call to Him sincerely. To be given an opportunity to make a choice is a huge gift. It's not a small deal. Choices are what give us everything. Choices are what give us meaning and reward, eternal relationship and bond to the Creator of the universe, who desires and wishes, who wills to create the world constantly. He's constantly recreating everything from nothing because He desires, He wishes, He wills to give us good. So the more choices that I can make, and the Ramchal discusses in Derech Hashem, that Hashem created the world in such a way where we can earn reward, where there's balance, there's an inclination towards good, and there's an inclination towards evil, and it's our job to choose, and to choose correctly. And when we make the right choice, then God gives us infinite reward for it. And that was the setting of the original choice, which was in the Garden of Eden, whether or not to eat from the tree of knowledge. And the simple understanding. And we never divert from the simple understanding. That's one of the rules in the Torah. I believe. I'm pretty sure about that. I could be wrong. Maybe I said it a little bit wrong, but I'm pretty sure. So I pay attention and I say, oh wow, why is it that no matter how hard I try, maybe I'm in a situation, I'm faced with a choice, and I'm trying to remember to that. I literally just can't remember. I can't think of anything. My mind is blank. All I have in front of me is there's a choice in front of me. Time is of the essence. The moment is now. If not now, then when? This is it, right now. What choice am I going to make? Am I going to do the wrong thing or the right thing? This opportunity will never come again. This opportunity comes once in a lifetime, yo. Every choice that we make is unique. Yeah, we can do tshuva and we can fix choices by making the right choice the next time we're faced with the same situation. Yet still, I have an opportunity to do it this way, this time, and that moment is once in a creation. That moment. That's what adds meaning to life as well, and that's what gives humankind, purpose and drive, is the concept that there's death. I learned that in yeshiva. The concept of death drives a person forward. If we lived forever, if we lived and we didn't die, then everything is kind of, there's no drive. So, just observing that Hashem, so I know Hashem gives me the awareness, and it's kind of ironic that this situation has placed me in a choice, and I can't think of anything else. I can't remember why I should do it. All I know is that I should do it, and I have to do something which makes me uncomfortable, which is difficult for me, which I don't want to do, which, my drives, the animal inside me doesn't want to do. It wants to relax, it wants to eat more, it wants to sleep more, it wants to party more, it wants to watch TV more, whatever it is that's not learning Torah, right? We have to think about what's the mitzvah that I should be doing. And sometimes maybe I don't know exactly what I should do. Well, that in and of itself is being honest with yourself, and you should say, okay, well, what should I be doing right now? That's a choice. The choice is to be honest. When you're choosing to be honest, that's a constant state of existence. That's a constant state of being. That's the importance of honesty. From that choice to be honest, all the other choices come into existence. They come into perspective. Because when you're choosing to be honest, that's what creates these situations where I even have this voice inside of me that is a conscience, which is this fear of Shemaim, this fear of heaven. Otherwise, I could choose to silence it. That's a choice that people make, to suppress their conscience, to silence their conscience. That's a choice. That's a choice that people make. Bezrat Hashem.